Hundreds of farmers in Arkansas gathered at a town hall last week to ask Congress for help. Mounting debt, aging equipment, and disappearing profits are making it nearly impossible for them to break even, let alone to turn a profit.
America's farmers have weathered droughts, floods, and recessions. They've seen war and survived pandemics. However, tariffs have created an unprecedented challenge, an invisible storm that is undermining their livelihoods acre by acre, season by season. The American food system is based on exports. Without international markets, modern farming's math fails. Tariffs did not safeguard farmers, rather, they exposed their vulnerabilities. Families who formerly hoped to pass on land to their children are now concerned about losing it completely. Communities that relied on agriculture have seen businesses close, schools struggle, and prospects bleak. Farmers know exactly what they need: market access, not bailouts or hollow promises. They want to sell their crops, not keep them in storage. They want fair pricing, not subsidies. They want dignity, not dependence. The question is whether Washington will listen, if leaders will restore lost international trust before America's farm belt collapses under the weight of its own crops. Because if the heartland fails, more than just farmers will suffer. It will be the country that they have fed for centuries. Soybeans are the backbone of U.S. farm exports. 1 out of every 4 rows planted in America has to leave the nation to find a customer. For decades, China was the buyer. At its peak, Beijing bought 61% of the world's soybeans, while the United States shipped more than $12 billion worth over the Pacific each year. However, with Trump's tariffs, the door slammed shut. China abruptly stopped buying American soybeans. That single decision wreaked havoc on the U.S. farm sector. No other country on earth could absorb such a large supply. Even if American farmers won every other consumer in Europe, Africa, and Latin America, they would still fall short of replacing China's appetite. Brazil stepped in almost immediately, grabbing the market that America had abandoned. Chinese corporations inked long-term contracts with Brazilian producers, developed new port infrastructure, and even invested in African farmland as part of the Belt and Road Initiative. Meanwhile, U.S. farmers faced overflowing silos and dropping prices. Ships once filled with beans are now empty. For many producers, it felt as if years of careful planning had been erased in one season. The message was clear. In an age of global trade, losing China meant losing the game. And, through no fault of their own, America's farmers became pawns in a wider political conflict. On paper, farming has always been about taking risks and reaping rewards. But today, the math simply does not work. According to Purdue University, growing a bushel of soybeans costs approximately $12.03, which includes seed, fertilizer, equipment, and labor. However, due to tariffs and market collapse, farmers are now selling them for closer to $9 a bushel. That is a loss of more than $3 per bushel grown. When multiplied by thousands of acres, the results are astonishing. Farmers have reported losses of $120 per acre on soybeans, $220 per acre on corn, and nearly $375 per acre on cotton. In an industry with razor-thin margins, those figures aren't simply bad, they're catastrophic. Even farmers with the most advanced equipment, million-dollar combines, GPS-guided tractors, and massive crews are failing to break even. In fact, the larger the operation, the higher the losses. Those who invested substantially in contemporary technologies are now drowning in debt. Smaller farms are making do with aging equipment, such as 1970s tractors and 1990s combines, but they are also losing money. Rising gasoline prices and higher input costs erode any savings. Many families face difficult choices: take out loans they may never repay, reduce household spending, or consider selling land that has been in their family for centuries. The break-even point has fallen beyond reach. And with each new season, more farmers fall below it, transforming what was once a noble profession into a financial disaster. Farmers like to assert that they aren't just raising crops, they're building America. They provide food, fiber, and the cornerstone for the nation's economy. But now, those builders are witnessing their world fall. Farmers in town halls across the Midwest describe equipment that appears to be museum pieces rather than modern tools. Old tractors from the 1970s and combines from the 1990s have been kept alive with parts salvaged from scrapyards. These relics keep costs down, but they also demonstrate how vulnerable the business has become. Meanwhile, their neighbors with million-dollar machinery and paid crews of 10 aren't doing any better. Tariffs and low prices are not discriminatory. Even the most technologically advanced farms cannot outrun the math. Rising interest rates increase the pressure. Farmers who previously relied on crop loans to bridge the gap between planting and harvesting are now facing interest rates that make borrowing unsustainable. Banks tighten lending, and rural America's lifeline, seasonal financing, is slipping away. Many families' dreams of passing on farms to future generations have turned into nightmares. Instead of inheritance, they are concerned about leaving nothing except debt. The builders of America are on the verge of collapse, and the country they have nurtured for generations appears unconcerned. Washington's response to the agriculture crisis has been bailouts. Trump's administration provided billions of dollars in direct aid to offset tariff losses, issuing checks that farmers cashed with mixed views. Relief, undoubtedly, but also bitterness. Because bailouts don't restore markets. They do not reopen the door to China or provide guarantees to European buyers. They are temporary measures rather than long-term remedies. Farmers accept it. Subsidies may help them pay their bills this year, but the same situation will arise again the following year. One farmer in Illinois put it bluntly, "We do not want handouts. We want marketplaces. Give us customers, not checks." Under current conditions, experts estimate that additional revenue of $150 to $200 per acre would be required to break even. Bailout payments do not come close to filling that shortfall. Worse, they skew planting decisions, encouraging some farmers to cultivate crops they cannot sell merely because the subsidy makes the situation somewhat less painful. As a result, the circle of dependency continues indefinitely. Farms endure one season but collapse the next. Every bailout comes with political conditions, tying farmers' futures to Washington's decisions rather than the global economy. Band-aids can help stop the bleeding. However, they do not heal the wound. The wound is getting deeper for American farmers. Farmland has long been known as Trump country. In 2016 and 2020, rural Americans turned out in droves for him, certain that he spoke their language and knew their hardship. However, tariffs have shifted the conversation. Debates heat up at town halls across Iowa and Arkansas. Some farmers stay faithful, insisting that Trump's tough stance on China is vital. They believe that short-term suffering will result in long-term gains, restoring America's trade strength. Others have lost patience. They see no endgame, just endless losses. "We can't eat promises," a farmer joked. "We need prices that pay the bills." The division is glaring. Families that used to vote together are now split down the middle. Neighbors shun politics at church or the grain elevator, refusing to jeopardize friendships over trade battles. The political divide is structural rather than personal. Rural rage is escalating, and it is not limited to one party. Democrats see an opening and promise to re-establish trade connections. Populists on both parties demand further subsidies. Meanwhile, farmers are wary of all politicians, believing Washington has turned them into collateral damage in a global chess game. At this juncture, the agricultural belt must decide whether to continue the course and trust the strategy or to seek a different approach before it is too late. America's farmers have weathered droughts, floods, and recessions. They've seen war and survived pandemics. However, tariffs have created an unprecedented challenge. An invisible storm that is undermining their livelihoods acre by acre, season by season. The American food system is based on exports. Without international markets, modern farming's math fails. Tariffs did not safeguard farmers. Rather, they exposed their vulnerabilities. Families who formerly hoped to pass on land to their children are now concerned about losing it completely. Communities that relied on agriculture have seen businesses close, schools struggle, and prospects bleak. Farmers know exactly what they need: market access, not bailouts or hollow promises. They want to sell their crops, not keep them in storage. They want fair pricing, not subsidies. They want dignity, not dependence. The question is whether Washington will listen, if leaders will restore lost international trust before America's farm belt collapses under the weight of its own crops. Because if the heartland fails, more than just farmers will suffer. It will be the country that they have fed for centuries.